All right. This sentencing is going to be somewhat complicated, so I want everybody to be patient. There's a number of counts, there's some complicated legal issues, so we're going to take our time to go through the sentencing. So,
yeah, at least, John, if I might say, the representative of the victim, Lisa Tokes, wants to make a statement to the court, and I understand it would be on the counts that are non-homicide counts, at least.
We'll hear from anybody you want to present, Mr. O'Brien. So you can proceed, whoever wants to make a statement, if it's the advocate, if it's the family, anybody that wants to make a statement.
The victim's mother, Lisa Tokes.
All right.
And her husband, Toby, will accompany her, but he will not make a statement.
First, ma'am, would you please state your name for the court reporter?
Yes, Lisa McCrary Tokes.
Thank you. What would you like to tell me?
We would like to take this opportunity to thank the Grove City Police Department, the prosecution team, you as the judge, the jury, and any others that we might be forgetting. We know that you all did the best that you could for justice for Reagan. Regardless of the outcome of today's verdict, it doesn't bring our daughter back. It doesn't erase the night of terror that Reagan had to endure. It doesn't erase the graphic details and images that are forever burned into our minds. Most importantly, it doesn't change that she wasn't granted her last wish. And to quote our daughter, her last words, "I just want to live." These words from the mouth of a kind, vibrant, loving soul that had her whole life ahead of her still. The terror and pain that she endured that night at the hands of evil, she deserved better. And our loss and pain will never get better. What can never be taken from us, however, is the love that we had and have as a family, and the love and memories that we shared with Reagan. We will remain vigilant and hold steadfast to that love and to our faith. We know that Reagan is in heaven and evil has not won. We will continue to honor her memory and legacy in a positive, loving way. We will take the high road and focus our energy on doing good, just like Reagan was. Her beautiful, bright, vibrant light and energy, love and spirit is forever. Thank you.
Thank you. That took a lot of courage. The prosecution like to introduce any other evidence or make any other comments with regard to sentence.
Yes, Your Honor. We would ask the court to accept the jury recommendation, and I think I have at least received some questions. The court does not have the discretion to overrule the jury recommendation and impose a death sentence. So certainly the state knows and understands that, but I've had some questions about that. We would ask the court to impose a life without parole sentence on counts 1, 3, 5, and 7. As far as a merger under 294125, the High Revised Code, the state would elect that the court impose the life without parole sentence on count 1, which is a prior calculation and design count, together with the 3-year gun spec, as well as the other specifications that the court just found. The state would ask the court, to having made those findings, that you also impose life without parole on the kidnapping and rape counts, and that the court sentence the defendant in accordance with the first-degree felony penalties that exist for the aggravated robbery, and a maximum sentence on the tampering with evidence counts, which are third-degree felonies, as well as the weapon under disability. And with that, I think the state is, in the jury's recommendation, assured the defendant will never be released from prison, will die in prison. So unless the court has any questions, the state had nothing by way of evidence or recommendations to make.
It's my understanding under the law, counts 3, 5, and 7, you agree merge into count 1, and I can only sentence on count 1. I can't sentence on 3, 5, and 7, correct?
Correct, since the state elected count 1.
All right. Very good. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Can you stand up for me? What would the defense like to say, if anything?
Your Honor, we would ask you to accept the jury's recommendation of life without parole. Other than that, nothing further.
Mr. Golsby, you have the right to make a statement to me. If you want to do that, the law allows you to do that. You're not required to do that. Do you desire to make a statement?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Courts considered all the principles in sentencing in 29-29-11 and 29-29-12. I do have a few comments. There have been a number of calls, not only to the court, but to other people regarding the sentence. Jury did a fantastic job. They did their job. They listened to the evidence. So I hope people don't criticize this jury verdict. We brought in 12 citizens who returned what they felt was a just verdict. It was a deadlock verdict, but again, that goes to the nature of the way our law works. So I hope there's no criticism of anybody in the system. I'd like to commend the lawyers in this case for both sides. We have a system of justice. It's the best in the world. This case was prosecuted fairly and with passion in accordance with the law. And the defense did an amazing job for you, Mr. Golsby. I hope you don't waste their efforts, because you're standing here alive because of your lawyers. I hope you know that. And again, that's part of the system, and it worked in my opinion. And for law enforcement, what an amazing job. I've never seen a case where DNA results come back in 24 hours, whatever it is. The Grove City Police, in conjunction with BCI and others, what an amazing job. And, you know, it's no secret that Mr. Golsby's under indictment for 6 robberies that he's presumed innocent in German Villiage. And those cases will probably resolve at some point. But he had an ankle monitor on. It wasn't monitored. And his behavior did what? It escalated. He beat some elderly women and robbed them. Had he been monitored, this may never have happened. And so I applaud you, the Tokes, for trying to get the law changed. But for law enforcement, had they not taken action, had they not done what they did, who knows if we would have had another victim. He certainly was out there trolling and looking for victims. What else was he doing besides riding around in the short north? So I cannot say enough about law enforcement in this case. And I applaud the Tokes for recognizing that. These officers worked overtime, went above and beyond. They attended the trial. I just can't say enough. All right. I believe in redemption. I'm a person of faith. And I believe there's something redeeming in you, Mr. Golsby. Maybe nobody can believe that or see that, but I believe in redemption, and you better take this opportunity to do something constructive while you're in prison. Your lawyers got your life spared for you. You asked for mercy, sir, and you showed none that night. It's ironic to me that you stood before the jury, and I don't know whether you were genuine or not. I can't look into your mind. But you asked them for mercy, yet showed none when she asked to live. And I don't know why you did that, sir. You had a horrible background, but you did have choices. You know, but for the grace of God, others of us could be in your boat. I had great parents. A lot of people have great parents. Reagan had great parents. You need to understand, she did nothing wrong. Your life got spared because at least 4 members of the jury, maybe less, more, something in that neighborhood, felt that those were mitigating. And so your life got spared because of your childhood, and yet Reagan did nothing wrong whatsoever, and I find it ironic, and yet she forfeited her life because of your background. You get spared because of your background, and yet she forfeited her life. She did nothing wrong except be at work. So at any rate, this is a horrible crime. It's sad all the way around. That's all the comments I'm going to make. I'm going to go ahead to sentencing. On count 1, the aggravated murder, the court's going to impose life without parole. I'm going to impose an 11-year sentence on the repeat violent offender specification consecutive to the life without parole. I'm going to impose 3 years on the firearm specification consecutive. That's a total of 14 years consecutive to the life without parole. On the kidnapping, the court's going to impose life without parole. That's what the law calls for because of your sexual motivation specification, your sexually violent predator specification, and the repeat violent offender specification. I'm going to add 3 years consecutive to that for the gun specification. That's the kidnapping count. The ag murder count 3 merges. Count 4, the aggravated robbery. Court's going to impose 10 years plus 3 years, 10 years on the felony 2 ag robbery, 3 years consecutive to that on the gun specification for a total of 14 years. That's consecutive to the sentences that I'm going to impose on counts 2 and the remainder of the counts that call for a term of prison. Count 5, aggravated murder, merges. Count 6, rape. This also calls for life without parole because of the sexually violent predator specification, the repeat violent offender specification. So I'm imposing life without parole. You're also going to be required, and you've signed the document because of the, well, I believe it's not only the kidnapping, but the rape. You're required to register. Even though you'll never get out of prison, the law requires I engage in these formalities and notify you that if you were ever to get out of prison, which you're not going to get out of prison, you would have to register for your lifetime in person every 90 days in the county in which you reside. That isn't going to happen with the law. Again, if I don't comply with it, somebody can argue that I didn't comply with the law. You've signed it. You've been notified of your obligations. If counsel will come up and let the record reflect that the green copy is being handed, which the law again requires. Let the record reflect Mr. Golsby not only signed it, he's been handed the notification by his counsel. The aggravated murder count 7 merges. Tampering with evidence, 3-year maximum prison sentence consecutive to the other sentences. Count 9, 3-year prison sentence consecutive to the other sentences. The weapons under disability, 3 years consecutive to the other sentences. The law requires I make findings before I'm allowed to consecutively sentence you. In order to consecutively sentence you, the law requires I make these findings under 2914C4. Consecutive sentences, in my opinion, even though we got life without parole, this case will no doubt be appealed. Issues will be raised on appeal. Lawyers feel like they have a legal obligation to do that. I'm going to notify you of your appeal rights here shortly. So this is why I'm adding years on and making these findings. The consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public, to punish you, and they're not disproportionate to your conduct. And I find that two or more of the multiple offenses committed as a single course of conduct caused harm so great or unusual that a single term does not adequately reflect the seriousness of the conduct. So, obviously we have a rape here, we have multiple robberies, multiple attempts to withdraw money. You took her to a field, made her strip down naked. No doubt she thought she was going to live because you stripped her down naked and you probably told her, hey, I'm going to strip you down naked and let you live, and then you executed her. I'm not a machine, I'm a human being that has feelings too. I try to set them aside, and I think I gave you a very fair trial, sir, but I cannot sit here unaffected as a human being about what happened in this case. And that's what makes this job hard, in my opinion, as a judge. But at any rate, the court also finds that your criminal history shows that consecutive terms are needed to protect the public. We've already gone through the two violent offenses that you have were previously convicted of. I believe that's sufficient to make the consecutive findings. Does either side wish me to make additional findings on the consecutive findings?
No. The state believes the court made sufficient findings to justify the consecutive sentences that you have imposed.
All right.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Now, you have the right to appeal your conviction. I believe we've had you sign that either electronically or physically sign it. You have 30 days from the date that this is entered into as a judgment entry in the computer. I am going to appoint you counsel. I'm going to appoint the Franklin County Public Defender's Office. I think we prepared that form, so they have been appointed. What am I missing?
No pretrial credit, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you. What is his jail credit?
404 days, I believe.
All right, we'll award 404 days against the sentences that I've imposed. The law also, again, requires something that's ridiculous, but if I don't, I've seen cases reversed on that point. The law also requires that I notify you if you were ever to get out of prison, you would be monitored for a 5-year period. It's called mandatory post-release control. It would be done through the Adult Parole Authority. They give you rules and regulations. If you violated the rules, you could go back to prison for 1/2 the time. If you committed any new crimes while out on that, it would be consecutive. Again, it's ridiculous, but I do have to advise you of that because your sentence of life without any attempt at parole, and again, life means life. This will never happen. But let the record reflect, I notified him. He's going to sign a form in the computer. His counsel will have him do that. I believe at this point I've covered everything. Is there any additions, corrections, or modifications from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor, other than directing the disposition of the exhibits that were admitted at trial, the state and talking to the defense counsel and the bailiff, and I assume with the consent of the court reporter, would direct custody of the exhibits pending any appeal to the prosecutor's office, where we will retain them in our property.
Any objection to the prosecution retaining the exhibits?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
Fines and costs.
Court waives any fines and costs. You're not going to be able to pay any fines and costs. I waive those. I find that you're indigent. Any additions, corrections, modifications on behalf of the defense based on the sentence or anything else procedurally?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you all for being professional. That's all. Thank you.